site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in making the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We're mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship and being mindful of generations to come. So with that, we'll begin our meeting. We have regrets from Councillor Allen tonight, and everybody else is here. So first thing is amendments to the agenda. Do we have any amendments? Seeing none. Disclosure of monetary interest. Councillor Dwyer.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm going to declare on item 8.6, the road maintenance and development agreement. My husband is negotiating this agreement on the township's party.
Great, thank you. So 8.6 for Councillor Dwyer. Any other disclosures tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to adoption of the minutes. That minutes of the May 9th, 2022 and May 16th, 2022 committee of the whole meetings be received and filed. Anybody want to move that? Councillor Alfred, seconded by Councillor McKenna. All those in favor? And sorry, we're just going to get this Cio Morris to confirm that staff is present, members of the public. So a roll call for staff. Malcolm.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So we have with us Director McMahon from Public Works, Director Costello from Corporate Services, Director Manhire from Community Services, Fire Chief Rick Cheeseborough, and our Senior Planner Carl Grenke, and of course our Deputy Clerk Nadine Bennett.
Great, thank you. And with that, you can take it away for Cio Directory Reports.
Thank you. We have 4 this evening, and we can start with Director Costello.
Thank you. I've got 3 very quick reports this evening. The first is just giving notice of a zoning bylaw statutory meeting, which will be held Thursday at 5 p.m. It is hosted by PAC. If anybody wants to review the draft bylaw, it can be found on the town's website, smithfalls.ca, under the business tab and then under planning, and that'll take you directly to the bylaw. So again, that's going to be a statutory public meeting Thursday at 5 p.m. hosted by PAC. As indicated last week, looking for feedback regarding our property standards bylaw. So anybody who's interested in making comment can do so at the Speak Up Smith Falls website. You do not need to be registered to make comment. It is anonymous, and it is available until June 5th for anybody who wishes to make any comments or give public feedback regarding updating that bylaw. And the third report, very quickly, is we have updated our website to include all of the 2022 municipal election information. So if residents would like to go to our website, again, smithfalls.ca, under the Civic Services tab and then under Election, we have all the information regarding candidates who filed, as well as information for voters, information for potential candidates, as well as information regarding third-party advertisers and compliance audit committee. So if anybody is interested and wants to keep updated on our municipal election, that's where we'll be updating the information. And that's all tonight, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Costello. Any questions, comments? Seeing none. Great. Thank you very much tonight. We'll move to our next one.
Next up, we have Art from Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick update on the Early Childhood Education Center. We have the province has signed on to the daycare piece. The province still doesn't have the policies written, but the county is working with them to develop those. And in the meantime, we are looking to ramp up service at Thurber Street and capacity. So staff are busy doing that. We will be recruiting for staff, and then registration will open once we determine the format for that. And we anticipate that we will have that by midsummer.
It's great news. Thanks, Director Manhire. Any questions, comments? Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to remind, I think part of that agreement also included a wage increase over the next couple of years for early childhood educators. So for those of you interested in a career, it's a really wonderful opportunity. I think tuition and some of that training might even be subsidized, and the wages have gone up, will be going up over the next couple of years. So now is the time to think about a career change and work at one of our Smiths Falls Child Development Centers.
Excellent pitch, Councillor McKenna. Any other questions, comments? So good news all around. We've got employment opportunities and more daycare spots opening up. So thank you, Director Manhire.
So, Mr. Chair, the third of 4 verbal reports will come from Chief Cheeseborough.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 quick updates for this evening. We have been notified that we were the only department that submitted a tender package for the county dispatching agreement. Myself and CEO Morris will be meeting with county staff next week to negotiate that contract. The second item, I just wanted to give council a brief update on Saturday night's activities. We had 4 dispatching staff in covering the numerous calls. At the height of it, there was 84 emergency calls coming in the emergency 911 system, with an additional 50 calls coming in on the non-emergency line, not to mention the 2 regular lines that were active as well. So there was an excess of over 200 calls received through the dispatching center. We in Smiths Falls responded to 5 emergencies, 1 structure fire, an alarm ringing, a motor vehicle accident, and an activated alarm. So it was an extremely busy night right up until 20 after 10 on Saturday night. That is my update for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, comments? Thank you very much to everybody that gave up their Saturday afternoons and evenings for keeping things running. And CEO Morris, are you the last one?
I am, yes. Thank you. And I'll preface my comments by apologizing for the background noise. There's a lot of rock hammering going on Beckwith Street, and I seem to have a front row seat to it. So as annoying as it is the sound of progress. So we happily tolerate it. Anyway, my report deals with a delightful morning of celebration we had today. This year marks the 5th anniversary of the boat in Smiths Falls. They moved their North American headquarters here 5 years ago and set up operations. So their global marketing team was here in Smiths Falls today. And many dignitaries from the area were in attendance, including Mayor Pankow, Councillors Brennan and Councillor McKenna. And their managing director walked us through kind of the successes and accomplishments over the last 5 years. And it's indeed a success story, no question. When they began here 5 years ago, the plan was to have a fleet of 32 vessels in Smiths Falls. They are at 30 presently, and they intend to add 4 more for next season. So the pandemic put that behind a little bit, but it looks like they're going to eclipse their original projection for the number of vessels. In terms of bookings, it's a great news story. They're almost at the same number of bookings as they had in 2019 before the pandemic for this year. So it looks like a very robust year of boating on the Rideau, on a boat vessel. And interestingly, right now, about 85% of their book customers are domestic, either Canadian or American, and 15% are from Europe or further afield. So traditionally, that number's been about 30%. So they're expecting more Europeans probably next year to come and visit the Rideau. So Really good news. They're delighted with the progress so far. The media reach has been phenomenal. They've really put the Rideau Canal and indeed Smiths Falls on the map, so to speak. So we're very happy to have them here after 2 years of pandemic, and very excited about their expansion plans. Staff are meeting with the global team tomorrow to talk about next steps in terms of expansion and how we can help accommodate their growth in that sector. So really good news story. It was a great event, great to get back together with the folks from England that run the boat. And they're very, very excited about the potential here in Smiths Falls. So a good news story all around. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Cio Morris. I was sorry to miss it, but great to get the update and great to see the boats going in the water. Any questions, comments? Seeing none. So with that, we've got no correspondence items, no in-camera issues. So we'll go right to priority issue 8.1, procedural bylaw report with Director Costello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I bring forward tonight a report which outlines some of the changes that council requested. Last time we spoke about this, there was definitions that council wanted to beef up, so we have done so. Advisory committee, local board, as well as 2/3 vote. All of those have been updated, and we've added some more content to those definitions. There was also some discussion about how items appear on a committee of the whole agenda. We've made some amendments regarding the inaugural meeting. This wasn't from an outcome of a committee of the whole discussion, but this was from the outcome of the Municipal Elections Act. So we've made an amendment regarding the inaugural meeting to correspond with some amendments to the Municipal Act. We've also beefed up the role of the acting chair, or we're looking at beefing up the role of the acting chair. Council discussed the role of the acting chair, specifically about when debate is underway. This is currently under review. I know that council wants to make this change. However, this is part of parliamentary procedure. So I just want to make sure if we're going to make a change that we're not doing something that could be seen as illegal. So that is still under review. We added, and I believe it was Councillor Dwyer who requested to add something regarding dress code. So we have added a clause regarding dress code, regarding business casual being the preference. We've made a small amendment regarding the role of clerk, regarding email correspondence. We removed that so that that the clerk is accessible by any modes of communication. However, you'll notice in the report, I have outlined some items that I need council's direction on to be able to bring forward a new bylaw to you to review, specifically meeting schedule. And I believe that was something Councillor McGuire had brought forward at the last meeting, specifically about holding meetings on Tuesdays following a stat holiday, I believe. The hybrid meeting option is something that we've discussed in the last couple of years. However, we need to make some decisions regarding adding that into the procedural bylaw as well. And there's multiple questions within that one option or within that one item, as well as debate about the student counselor program, as well as items on special meeting agendas. So if we can get some direction on those items, I'd be able to bring forward a clean copy of the procedural bylaw at our next committee of the whole meeting.
That's great. Thank you, Director Costello. So we've got in a report areas for discussion and direction that are well laid out. Did anybody have any questions, comments on the sections above that before we get into the areas for debate? So everybody's good with everything from the definitions down to the debate section. I'm seeing nodding heads. So that brings us to item number 1's meeting schedule. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. Yeah, I really do like the idea of consolidating the meetings. I think it makes a lot of sense and it gives us a great deal of efficiency. I have worked under councils that have had cow first and then immediately passed bylaws following, which is super efficient when you're staff. But I will say, I think that there's benefit in working with a pregnant pause. So you do your council meeting first and then your cow, which gives you 2 weeks to confer with the public about what you've debated before you actually pass the decision. So I do like the idea of doing the consolidated meetings and doing meetings twice a month instead of doing them 4 times a month. But I would strongly suggest that we structure it so that council comes first and then committee of the whole second.
Thanks, Councillor Dwyer. So there's preference for consolidated meetings. Is there any other questions, comments on that? Councillor Brennan, then Councillor Alford.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, tonight is an example. We're going to be discussing a couple of items that need to be decided upon tonight and through a motion or a bylaw passed. But I do think that another example would be the bylaw that we're discussing right now, and we don't need to make. I'd like to talk about it tonight and then give it a pregnant pause, as you said, Director Costello, and talk about it then. And I think that's been the practice, really, in my time. That we talk about things. If there's something that's time sensitive, yes, let's absolutely pass it the same night. But if it's not, a pause for consultation or talk to everybody about it is better. So I have no problem with that.
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Alford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I am supportive as well. In practice, I think that is what we've kind of been doing, and the staff have managed it reasonably well. The only caveat I would say is to be, and again, this would be up to staff, to be cognizant of how long some of these meetings can go. If we're going to put that in place, then and have the 2 at once, then there is the potential for those occasionally to get rather too long. And so I might consider putting in something like a 3-hour time limit, or at least in staff's planning of it. And as best you can plan to herd council through some of those discussions that sometimes take much longer than we had anticipated. So that would be my only comment. I think staff has managed it well up to now, with us having 2 when necessary. And Mr. Chair, I do have one other. I was not paying enough attention to you when you asked if we had any other comments above the debate parts. And I do have a couple of issues, but I can wait to talk about those later.
Okay, let's do that in between 1 and 2, maybe, just to get one settled.
Sure.
That's great, thank you. So, Mayor Panko.
Thank you. Well, it would be nice to have meetings every second week. I also wonder, but based on the volume of work that's happened, especially during this term, and anticipating that may continue, and the timeliness of getting some things approved, I'm concerned about how long meetings would be and how items may be getting deferred because we seem to be running out of time. Well, we occasionally have a committee of the whole where we may have a handful of things to look after, but for the most part, our committee of the whole meetings have already been 2+ hours in many cases, probably on average. And so we are cutting that down to less frequent. I think my concern would be the risk of having 3-hour meetings and then having a whole day, maybe longer, put a council meeting ahead of that, and then a committee of the whole where we're dealing with the volume of business is the same as it has been. That risk of having things deferred. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not convinced that it would be more effective to meet every second week.
Thanks, Mayor Panko. Cio Morris or Director Costello, a question on even whether we put this into the procedural bylaw the way it's already put in right now, and if we need an additional meeting, it's a special meeting. Is there anything in this change that would stop the ability to hold a special meeting, or would it just be different in how they're laid out?
No, there's nothing in this that would restrict council from having an emergency meeting or a special meeting, Chair Maguire.
Okay, so we still have a lot of flexibility. Councillor Dwyer, I saw your hand.
Thanks. Yeah, 2 points. Sean, I hear what you're saying about ensuring that you don't have these mega meetings, but I think, when you look back at the last couple of meetings, we ourselves have had, I think we had 2 items on our last committee of the whole, and tonight we have 11, so I think there's something to be said for knowing what your council schedule is and having it set instead of having these options of adding additional meetings, which I think will help staff prioritize which projects are coming forward when, particularly given the scale of those projects, so that if you've got a delegation for a master plan, that you're not going to schedule that for the same night that you're going to have a procedural bylaw that is going to get debated. I think the other component that we will probably be talking about shortly after we finalize the procedural bylaw is our delegated authority bylaw, which is going to make us passing, or the institution passing and actioning items much faster without them having to come through council for debate. So whether or not that's simply going on a consent agenda for council where the item is formalized and accepted by council without debate or discussion, or if it's simply something that is delegated to staff, I think it's going to bring great efficiency to our organization. But I think, being a working parent, if I know that I'm going to have 2 meetings a month, two evenings a month where my night is a write-off, that's far easier for me to plan than every Monday night where I may be in a meeting for an hour, I may be there for 6 hours. I think having it consolidated into fewer meetings, albeit longer meetings, will make this a much more efficient organization.
Thanks, Councillor Dwyer. Maybe is there any other questions, comments on that, or should we take a straw vote on going with the default 2 meetings? Councillor McKenna?
Yeah, no, it's a great conversation, and I'm glad Councillor Dwyer brought up the delegated authorities. That will, if we do it well, it will make things more efficient. I'm more aligned with I think we are managing it fairly well, and I think staff do their best to balance the workload that they're bringing forward to us. It is unusual. You're right. We had a couple items last week, and this week we have 11. A lot of them aren't heavy duty topics. So it's not the volume, it's the content that really, so I'm more leaning to the status quo, and but I do want to see that delegated authority coming through as well, and consent agendas. And I think we could shorten that up, but having the option of, or keeping closer to the status quo with those other caveats.
Thanks, Councillor McKenna. Any other comments? Councillor Alford?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just with regard to delegated authority, yes, if we're going to decide this on consent agendas, though, I've watched a number of meetings so I could familiarize myself with what that meant. And while it may be more streamlined for staff or for even councillor, it is much harder to understand for the public about what is being discussed or what is just being passed. So I don't know that I'm in favor of consent agendas. I do think, and I agree with Mayor Pankow, most of our meetings have been quite productive and quite, yes, we've had a couple of short ones, but most of the last 4 years, we've had fairly productive meetings week after week after week. So I'm more leaning to allowing staff to continue to do the job that they do, balancing our agenda. So I think I'm more leaning to status quo.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Alford. Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, and thanks for the comments, Councillor Dwyer. I think a consent agenda is something that I've thought about for a long time. And the thing about a consent agenda is there's a number of items on a consent agenda. Council has a look at it. And if any of us, any of my colleagues think there's something in the consent agenda that needs to be discussed, just they can pull it out and we'll discuss it. But I think it creates great efficiency, time. And there's so many times that things that we talk about are, as not to use a phrase again, but are no-brainers. and we listened to a report, and it's quite obvious that that's the way to go, then that should be in the consent agenda. If someone has some questions about it, pull it out. So I'm all for a consent agenda. And I'll have to give some thought to what Councillor Dwyer said. I think it's going to speak to my comments on the next item. But it may, I'm still mulling that over about the 2 or 4 meetings a month.
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. So just to make it clear, I guess the first thing here is the 2 or 4 meetings a month. My preference would be the 2 meetings a month because we can always add the special meetings if it's required. But I like that idea of consolidating, but I don't know that we have consensus for that. So maybe if we do a straw vote before we move on from that one. All those in favor of reducing it to 2 standard meetings a month? Councillor Dwyer, Councillor Brennan, myself. So it's tied 3-3, so it drops. The second point I'd like to make, I don't know, sorry, Director Costello, is consent agendas later on here, or should we talk about that now?
Actually, it's not in this report. That is something I thought everybody was on the same page on from our previous discussion, albeit it was a short discussion at our last meeting. But that is something, Councillor McGuire, I can bring forward in more detail at the next committee of the whole when I bring forward a clean bylaw for you to review.
Okay, yeah, personally, I haven't had a chance to really dig into that one for tonight. So if it's okay with the committee, maybe we can bring that at the next report. I'm seeing nodding heads, so that's great. So we'll table the consent agenda conversation. One conversation I do want to have on meeting schedule is the pushing them on the short weeks as we're experiencing this week. I find that the way we set up our weeks is we keep our Mondays clear because we know there's a high chance we're going to have a meeting. But then our committee meetings and other obligations are set to fixed days of the week. So we've got Municipal Heritage 3rd Wednesday of the month. We've got things on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I find when we move the meetings like this, we're trying to squeeze 5 days of work into a 4-day week. But at the same time, next week's the 5th Monday of the month, and we're not going to meet. So my preference would be to have the default be cancel the meeting on the short weeks, meet on the 5th Monday of the month. And the way I look at the calendar I think it averages out to the same number of meetings. It just, it keeps our meetings on the full week so we can set those Mondays aside. Is there any other strong feelings either way on that one? Councillor Dwyer?
Yeah, I'm easy either way. I think we are the only sitting council in the area that meets on Mondays. Most meet on Tuesdays for that very reason. If you've done the math and it's consistent year over year, that we're not losing a meeting by dropping the stat in favor of a 5th Monday, I think that's a reasonable solution.
Councillor Alford?
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable solution as well. It is difficult, particularly for not so much staff because they've done the work, but for council to get it on Thursday, particularly of a long weekend when many people have other obligations, it's difficult to get to something like the agenda we have tonight. So I would be fine with that, going with the 5th Mondays and not doing the short weeks.
Great. I'm seeing nodding heads. Any other questions, comments, or are we good to? Okay, so if there's no other conversation on meeting schedule, we'll move on to hybrid meeting option. That's okay. Okay, so hybrid meeting option. I'd like to kick that off. Councillor Dwyer.
Okay, so I've thought a great deal about hybrid meetings, and I have to say that in retrospect, I think that COVID has been a bit of a blessing for me because I don't think that I would have been as able to manage council obligations and a full-time job and a family if electronic meetings were not an option. And I think that if this council wants to be progressive and it wants to create an environment that offers parity to those who have more evening obligations, say, through whether it's family or volunteer functions that they offer in other aspects of the community. I think having the option for electronic meetings is vital to ensuring that you get a diversified council.
Thanks, Councillor Dwyer. We've got Councillor Brennan, then Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we'll all agree right now that that it's preferable to be amongst each other and discussing issues. However, as Councillor Dwyer said, the pandemic has changed sort of the way we do business. And the other point I'd like to make is that we want people to be interested in participating in the municipality, i.e. running for council. I have two people in front of me that are working. One has a family, and I just heard from one of them that this enables her to participate. So, you know, when people are thinking about, I really want to participate in my municipality, however, I've got kids at home, or I work, you know, till 6 o'clock, or I just, you know, it's a challenge. And so I think that having that option is valuable, and having the option for people that are volunteering on committees to participate hybridly is important as well. And so I think it's vital that we progress. And the question I would have for Director Costello, and I never asked a question if I don't know the answer, but with our new chambers, and we all look forward to sitting there together, and I really do look forward to sitting there together, but Director Costello, we will have the ability to do a hybrid meeting in our new chambers. Am I correct?
Yes, we actually met with the audiovisual consultants months and months ago to make sure that the chambers would be set up so that if council chose a hybrid option, that would be possible.
Okay, so I think it's really incumbent on us to enable anybody thinking of running, anybody sitting around in front of me, to have that option. And I, as I said at the outset, we all agree it's better to be amongst each other, but if it's not possible, it should not disenfranchise you from having the ability to participate. So I'm all for it.
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. We've got Mayor Panko, then Councillor McKenna.
Thank you. And the previous council had this discussion 4 years ago, roughly, maybe around the same time of the term, I believe, about the possibility of electronic meetings. And at the time, we didn't know what was coming, and the support was not there. But looking back at what we learned, I agree with what's been said by my colleagues. We know it can work, and it can work quite effectively. I think, and in trying to make sure we are inclusive, and try to make sure that people who want to run for council have an opportunity to have some degree of balance, I guess, in enabling them to attend from home when necessary. We know that there's times when people may not be feeling well. They can participate from home, wouldn't want to come into an environment where they could potentially spread illness to others. And especially what we've learned over the last couple of years is how effective our committees can work in this environment. And forcing people to meet in person, I think, would limit participation on some of our committees. And we've had great participation this term, and I wouldn't want to put any limitations on how successful that could be in the future. So I support a hybrid model. I think there's every reason to do so, and I can't think of any reasons why we would not.
Thanks, Mayor Panko. I'm just going to interject here before Councillor McKenna. I agree with the sentiment so far. I definitely don't miss the days when Councillor Dwyer and myself were racing down Highway 15 to get to the town hall on time. And if we want representation at the table, I think this is an important tool. So at this point, I think, does council wish to add a hybrid option? The answer is yes. I'm hearing consensus for. Maybe okay, we want some comments before we move on. Sorry, Councillor McKenna, do you want to weigh in, and then Councillor Alford?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there's no going back. We've moved forward. I would remind us that there's more than two people here working. It might be unpaid work, but we're all working, and we all have family obligations, including caring for elderly parents or loved ones. So it applies across the board. However, I'm particularly interested in younger people getting involved in politics who have young children, and they have some unique challenges, which I think this might alleviate some of those. So I am in favor. My thought is how we do it. We want to go there. And I believe there's research into this happening around the world. And I would like to ask staff to look at those, what is the best option, rather than us trying to figure out, there should be some limits or there have to be some parameters to it, but I don't know what they are, what is ideal. And we could debate that for quite a long time. But if there is some best practice out there, I would like to find out what that is. But I agree. I don't think you can go back to the olden days of only face-to-face.
Thanks, Councillor McKenna. Councillor Alford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, everyone's right. This is a much more inclusive way to do it. But I'm thinking about, not unlike Councillor McKenna, about how this will work. So could I go to, let me see, Europe for 3 months or 4 months? Am I in, and because I'm joining remotely, is that okay with our the people that are watching us, the people we represent? Is there any infrastructure around that? Is there any, can all of us do this and not bother coming to council chambers at all? I'm just a little bit about what the ratepayers and residents' expectations are for the people that they elect, and how we can have a balance of both. Like, will all of us be virtual all the time if we choose to? And I don't have the answers to that. I'm sure there's more discussion to take place, but sure, this is a very effective way, and we have come to be fairly effective at it. But there are some things that concern me about doing it electronically all the time.
So what I'm hearing is we've got consensus that we want to move forward with electronic meetings and hybrid meetings. And there's a real question of how are we going to pull it off? And Councillor McKenna's brought up, what are the best practices? What's the research say? And that's something that I haven't been able to figure out before we came to our meeting tonight. So maybe at this point, do we want to table this one and get more information, do some more research, and figure out how this looks for other municipalities in Ontario and across the country? So I'm seeing Cio Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would point out in the staff report, there are a series of questions in the report under section 2, subsection A to F, that may help lead you to a decision. And I think they may address some of the concerns Councillor McKenna had about how we do it. So if committee could provide us some direction, I think that would help formulate our understanding of your position on this one.
Good, thanks, Cio Morris. Councillor Dwyer.
Mr. Chair, because there are items B through H on here, might I suggest that we try and practice a consent agenda and suggest that anybody who wishes to debate the item speak now, or alternatively, we just straw vote for them.
Yeah, sure. So my impression was that it was either a yes or more information was needed for the other options. So we've got to F. So maybe I'll just go through this and we can give clear direction. So A, there's consensus. Yes, we wish to add a hybrid meeting option. B, does council wish to allow for electronic public meetings? I see a consensus. There's nodding heads. Yes. Does council wish to continue to allow boards, committees to use this format? I think if the committee wants to, great. Nodding heads. So we've got consensus for that. Councillor McKenna?
Well, Mr. Chair, it always depends on the details. So when we say that, so what does that mean, and are all of our public meetings are going to be electronic, or, so it depends, some of them it really makes sense and some it may not. So that's what I meant. And I'm not the expert here. So yes, I think we should head down that road, but there might be times when we want to have a public meeting and bring people into a room and have a conversation. It might be, anyways, it always depends. I don't mean to drag it out, but at a high level, yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think what we're talking about here is to allow for a hybrid meeting. We have a new chambers that is going to allow for that. So say you have Councillor Nalfa or I are on the Planning Advisory Committee. So if there's one member of the committee that can't come, he can still participate in the meeting. The meeting will be in the council chambers. So that's what we're talking about. It's hybrid. It's not like totally electronic. It could be either way. In my view, that's what I'm reading it as.
Okay, so yeah, I definitely agree. Like there was the active transportation consultation public meeting. There was much more engagement because everybody had their own little screen on in the conference room that we were part of that could contribute. You didn't have to stand up in front of a crowd. But at the same time, I don't know that we've got the information tonight to lay out a blueprint of what this is going to look like or what this should look like. So at that point, when we get into these, the EFGH, this is where I'm thinking we need more information. Or what would the consensus of our group be tonight?
Okay. Mr. Chair, I think we can, it's not like we've discussed it half to death yet. We're raising some flags of some of these issues, but some of the do you wish to allow delegations? Well, we probably have consensus on that. The trickier ones are, do members have to be physically present to count as to whether there's a quorum? And how do we feel about that? And like I mentioned earlier, how many people does there have to be anybody in the council chambers or no one in the council chambers? Does there have to be a majority of members present in council and then add the others electronically? I don't know how we feel about that. Does the mayor, can they be the mayor or the chair? Do they have to be present, or can the rest of us be present and that particular one is electronic? How do we feel about that? I think we still have lots to discuss to be able to give. And will we know everything or settle on everything tonight? I don't know that, but it would certainly give staff some more ideas about where we're going, where we feel we should go.
Okay, so that's fair. If we look at E, do members have to be physically present to count as whether there is quorum? Well, if you're in the meeting in a hybrid option and you get a vote, you have to count as quorum. So I think that's one that Councillor Dwyer.
Sorry. Perhaps that's a question that we can confirm with Carrie, because my understanding was that the Municipal Act was changed to acknowledge how quorum was considered during e-meetings. And I don't know, what I don't know is whether or not it was a temporary provision during the state of emergency in the Municipal Act, or if it was permanent. And my sense was that Ford's government had made it permanent.
Not to my knowledge, Councillor Dwyer. Now, that is definitely something I will be checking. I know this was an option way before the pandemic. This was an item that I think the previous Mayor Panko alluded to, that the previous council even debated. So these are the questions regarding quorum, as well as participating in closed sessions, are ones that council has to decide upon. And I certainly, as Mr. Cherry's alluded to, we did do some research when bringing up this report. And to be quite frank, there's quite a few municipalities that have adopted a hybrid model. There's still quite a few that have not. They're not there yet. If council is willing to give some direction this evening, as Cio Morris alluded to, I certainly don't mind going back and doing some more research and maybe a quick survey of municipalities and maybe some samples of wording from their bylaws on how they have dealt with specifically quorum. That's a big one that I know council will want to talk about, as well as the closed sessions. I think those are the two big ones that maybe some different samples from other municipalities might help council, as well as some wording from some other procedural bylaws that might assist council.
Okay, sounds good. So Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to repeat what the chair just said prior to, I assumed once we said, yes, we want to go to hybrid model, that automatically the person participating electronically helps make up quorum. Otherwise, why would we do it? So I just assumed that.
Okay, so I think for E, I'm hearing, yes, we need some more details on how it plays out, but overall, there's no objections to point E at this point.
Okay.
So does that give fair direction? We can go to point F?
Thank you. It does for me.
Okay, thanks, Director Costello. So F is, do members of council wish to establish a time period for e-participation? So for example, the council could pass a resolution that would give somebody a pass to attend meetings virtually. Is there anyone that would like to kick off the conversation on this one? Councillor Dwyer.
Sorry, not to belabor things, but actually I do want to go back because I would like it on the record. Bill 197 passed in July of 2020, made amendments to the Municipal Act to permanently allow for quorum for electronic meetings outside of the emergency period. So that is already contemplated.
Okay, great. So that, I think that gives us clear footing for E. For F, Councillor McKenna, did you?
Yeah, on F, Mr. Chair, I would like to, as we develop a hybrid model, to keep it as simple and as possible. So passing resolutions to allow me to participate because I'm not feeling well, or because I happen to be on the road or in a meeting in Kingston, that would be cumbersome for everyone involved. I'd like my suggestion to keep it simple, maybe put a cap on it. I don't know, but not. So I just don't know how that would work. Pass a resolution every time.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see some kind of a cap that it's not exploited, but not necessarily an approval every time. Councillor Dwyer.
Thanks. I agree. A cap would be nice, I don't think it should be in a position where you're abusing your power to just conduct your meetings electronically. That said, I mean, the Municipal Act contemplates attendance at meetings, and I think it's attendance being every 3 months is the limit, or you have to attend in if you miss 3 consecutive council meetings, then you forfeit your seat. So perhaps keeping it consistent with that would provide some sort of standardized benchmark that's kind of consistently applied in all aspects of council seating.
Okay, great. I don't know that we have enough information to give clear direction for F. Just there's so many options we could think about. Is there any other comments, or have we given Councillor Alford?
Not to say, but I definitely would want to see a cap, that there be, you are required to be in council chambers so much of the time, and there needs to be a cap that people can't be gone the whole time.
Mayor Penko?
Yeah, and the hard part here is pinning down a number. And as we mentioned a few minutes ago, we all want to be as inclusive as possible and understanding as possible. And we know that we can work effectively in this forum. Now, does that mean we should put a limit on how often or how frequently or how in totality, maybe someone could participate electronically? Or do we acknowledge that they can work quite effectively? Do we need to have them in person? And I'm not, based on what we've experienced the last 2 years, I'm not convinced we have to be fair. I mean, ideally, I think we'd want to meet in person, and I think most people would prefer that option. But if someone missed half of the year, but it was 2 weeks every month that they were away, is that necessarily a bad thing? I don't think so. If someone's going to go away for 6 months completely, different story, but still, if they're participating effectively from wherever they are and they're doing the job they're elected to do, I personally don't have an issue with that.
All right, thanks, Mayor Panko. Councillor Dwyer.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with what Sean's saying, and to some extent, whether or not the town and the residents of town feel that we are effectively and efficiently doing our job, whether it be electronically or not, will show up in the next election. If you miss over half your meetings and the taxpayers don't like that, or residents don't like that, then they're going to let you know. So these things have a way of kind of working themselves out. But I will also say, I mean, this is a municipal policy. We're not setting this in stone. I mean, as much as it's our procedural bylaw and you don't want to be constantly making amendments to the procedural bylaw, if we adopt something and then, 6 months or 12 months down the road, the new council says, this really isn't working, we don't like the way that this is creating an environment for us to make decisions in, then you pass an amendment,
All right, thanks, Councillor Dwyer. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, I have to agree with the mayor. As I said at the start, it's preferable for everybody to be there in person. However, and the other thing that wasn't mentioned was the viewerships of these meetings. When you have 200-300 people watching a meeting, then it's just a new way of doing business. No one's going to be, in my view, abusive of it. And I think that if you want to have a cap, you can look at the Municipal Act. I believe it's 3 months of missed meetings, then you've got a problem. But, I haven't missed a meeting for this whole term, I don't think. And so, everyone's conscientious. I think that this has been effective. We've been doing it for 2 years. So, I'm fine with whatever my colleagues decide, as long as we leave that option open, and not just for me or whoever else, but for people that are thinking of running. So I think it's a good carrot to draw people in.
Thanks, Councillor Brennan. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to differentiate between ourselves as elected officials and committee members. And I would not like to see the same restrictions. But as we all know, the 2 or 3 hours in meetings here on Mondays are only very part of our job. And prior to COVID, I was probably averaging about 20 hours a week, 15 to 20. And now I'm getting back up to 15 to 20 of other things that I do, that we do, all of us, all week long. So being absent, it also means you're not there for the other part of your job and away. So that's where I'm thinking, to Councillor Alfred's point, if I go to Ireland, which I would love to, for 3 months, but if I can't be here, I'm also not doing all of those other things. I'm joining my meetings, but I'm not at the LeBoat celebration today, where I think some of us can be, and so it's much more than just the meetings. So that's why I'm trying to put some parameters around this.
We've got Councillor Alfred, then Councillor Dwyer again.
I think Councillor Dwyer was first, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Dwyer.
Thanks. And I can appreciate where Councillor McKenna is coming from. You know, this is not just a job about meetings. But that said, not every councillor has the ability to make it to all of the ribbon cuttings and all the boat celebrations, because regardless of whether or not we're conducting our e-meetings at night, a lot of those events are during the day when some of us are working. So, and I think back to when I campaigned 4 years ago, I made it very clear that if the residents were electing me because they were looking for somebody to make good informed decisions, that was my intent in running. But I was very clear I was not going to be standing up and at the ribbon cuttings every week, because I did not have the capacity for that. So I think you know, there's different roles that we each play on council, right? And I think we knew that when we got into this, that some of us were going to have special interests and additional capacities and had better skill sets than others to fulfill certain aspects of this role. So I think, you know, I can appreciate what you're saying, but I don't think that changes, you know, the decision on the procedural bylaw for the conduct of meetings, because I think it's very likely that, just like me, there's going to be somebody else next term who is just here for the meetings.
Councillor Alford.
I'm not quite sure how to follow that. Yeah, I'll go back to Councillor McKenna, because certainly there are, Councillor Dwyer is right. There is capacity by some who don't have full-time jobs or families that have been quite diligent about making sure that they are there to support the good works of others in our communities, or celebrate some milestone, or go to, you know, any number of events during the week, during the work hours, and that's fine. The same happens on the weekends and evenings, and everybody does have their own skill set. But I think to myself about what do our residents expect of their council as a whole. And so that some of what we're discussing now, it'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback we get from potentially the people that are watching tonight as to what their expectations are as residents and voters. I do think that, and I believe it was someone very close in one of our townships that abut us that got elected and then went to Europe for 6 months, and eventually they had to go through the whole process of taking that seat back. I do think our residents expect us to be present and not just as 2-inch high figures on a television screen. I'm going to leave it there for now, because I'm sure we're going to talk about some other stuff that makes me uncomfortable too.
Thanks, Councillor Alford. I'm going to weigh in now. I'm with Councillor Dwyer, Mayor Panko, and Councillor Brennan. I think every rule we create when we're going over this document right now is in a way going to create some extra effort on the part of staff to enforce it and to administer it. I think that we're going into uncharted territory because this isn't a common practice that's happened before in the province. So why don't we start with it more flexible, and then let's build the rules around identified problems that need to be solved instead of just hypothetical ideas that may or may not be a problem when it comes to action. So if there's no other discussion, I think, or nobody else has changed their opinion, I think we had 4-2 on that. Okay, so does that give clear direction, Director Costello?
It does, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, so now we're on G, I believe, right? Does council wish to have the mayor, acting mayor, or chair actually present for meetings, or can they attend virtually? Councillor Dwyer.
Okay, I'll just say it. If any one of us finds themselves on the road more, it's the mayor. And you know, whether or not that's because Sean's down in Toronto meeting with ministers and he's, you know, joining in when he's back on the train coming back to town, like the role of the mayor needs to be, if any of us provided the flexibility to participate electronically.
Seeing nodding heads. Any?
I mean, unless Sean wants to say otherwise.
No, I agree. I think we've got consensus for that one. Thumbs up.
That
Okay, so-
includes the chair of for cows as well.
All right, so H is, does council wish to allow e-participating during closed sessions? So in camera sessions. And this one's a little more complicated. So let's see who wants to start off. Councillor Alford.
I'll just very simply say, no, I'm not. We have been in closed sessions and I have seen other people in the rooms of councillors during closed sessions. So no, I'm not in favor.
Any other questions, comments? Again, sorry, Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I appreciate that concern. And I would say it's very valid. The challenge, of course, would be if we are having hybrid meetings, electronic participation, we would have members, only the members in the room could participate and create some real issues. So, and potentially the lack of quorum to deal with in-camera issues. And they may come up at the last minute. We may not be aware of even the content until not much before the meeting. So I would suggest strict rules around that, strict wording within our code of conduct, and I guess potential repercussions for anyone being present during the camera session. But overall, I would support a member participating electronically to be able to participate in camera. I think it just would create some real gaps in how we would be able to follow through with things.
Thanks, Mayor Panko. Councillor Dwyer.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, concerns about breach of in-camera codes of conduct have long been an issue for councils, not just ours, across the board, you know. But I think that's why your code of conduct is there, like Sean said. And I think, you know, if there are concerns, then that needs to be reported and there's a process in which we go through. But just as, you know, we are instructed not to take notes during in-camera session, that we're not to leave the room following and discuss that matter with anyone else. You know, there's a certain element of trust that we all have of each other. And if there's a breach of that trust, then I think it needs to be called out, and there's a process in which we deal with that.
Thanks, Councillor Dwyer. If there's no other immediate comments, I'll weigh in. This one does give me more pause than the other ones. First question I have is, will the in-camera meeting room be set up for hybrid meetings? And just how, is there a process of transferring people from the main room into the in-camera meeting room? And will that room have the technology needed for continuity?
That's a great question, Councillor McGuire, Chair McGuire. I cannot say for certain. I know the council chambers will be, but if you would like to leave that with me, I will follow up with the audiovisual consultants that we're using. I believe it will be, because it is being set up as our emergency operations center as well. But I will confirm, just so we know for certain.
Okay, thanks. I guess my concern is just within camera, there's been hiccups within cameras through the virtual meetings, and technology is always going to be permeable. There's always going to be a way to get in. And there's something about being in a room with a closed door that has that privacy that you're never going to get over the internet. So leaning more towards keeping the in cameras in person, but maybe if we could do them once a month, or we could fix, you know, if you knew 3 or 4 weeks in advance that one was coming up, then you can plan around it. And then that also kind of solves the being out of town for 3 month problem. But any other feedback here? Not seeing. So I don't know. I'm not seeing a consensus on this one. What, Cio Morris? Oh, Councilor Brennan?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. You know, it's I think it's hand in hand with what we're doing with hybrid. So if the room can be wired up, then why not?
Okay, so maybe let's get more information from AMO, from other resources that we can find, and just try to find some best practices for this one before we make a firm yes or no.
I'll add this to the next meeting agenda as well with the consent agenda portion.
Great, thanks, Director Costello. So there's a few other clauses at the bottom here before we move on to 3. Does anyone want to discuss any of those or have strong feelings about them? Not seeing any hands, so I think we can discuss that when we see the bylaw in its entirety. We can see how it comes together. The next step's number 3, student counselor program. Does council wish to continue with the student counselor program? If so, will this be added as an appendix to the bylaw? Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is a wonderful feel-good program, and I love to see the youth when they're there around the table. However, I don't know the value added. The participation is very sketchy. It's a nice idea in theory, but in practicality, we only have them for part of the year, and you know, they don't get to vote. It makes me feel good, but I don't know the value added to the residents or to the students, and I don't know how if it's ever been properly evaluated. What were the goals of the program, and is it being, again, I like it, but is it practical? Does it work? Does it do what it was intended to do? So if it went away, I mean, it sounds awful, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. That's my thought.
Thanks, Councilor McKenna. Councilor Brennan.
Oh, absolutely keep it. You know, I've interacted with some of these kids. I think it was, well, I know my old colleague Kenny Graham brought this forward, and you know, there have been kids that really are, you know, don't engage, but there have been a lot of kids that have, and I still see them around, and you know, it really gives them what they feel is a voice, and some of them really have had great voices around the table, and they, you know, got engaged. And one particular student, I won't name her, actually received a bursary from the Rotary Club because she was so interested and into it. And I've seen lots of growth, and it's not for me, it's for the kids. And you know, they can take from it what they want. And there have been several student counselors that I know have grown and prospered and have a great experience around the table and feel like they're part of our community. So absolutely keep this.
Thanks, Councilor Brennan. If nobody else has a comment, I'll weigh in. Or Councilor Alford, is that your hand up? Okay. So I agree with Councilor.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Yes. Yeah, I feel it is a feel-good thing. I think in this term, maybe Councilor Brennan is remembering past terms, but in this last term, well, first we had a pandemic, but we had some, I can only think of 2 who really engaged in the process, and 1 who I would say was well worth the time that she spent here and what she added to it. So yeah, I could be 50-50 on this one.
Thanks, Councilor Alford. Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I sort of mixed emotions on this one as well. And I think to what's been said already, we've had some really effective and engaged student counselors who come in with a degree of confidence and leave with an elevated level of confidence, and others who maybe don't participate as much, don't get engaged. And for their own personal development, I think it's a very positive thing. There are times when they add a lot of value and perspective from a youth standpoint. overall, it's, I think we're looking back the last couple of years, it's been very difficult, obviously, through the pandemic. So I would like to see it retained. And of course, if it's turns out to be a challenge in the future, getting youth who want to be involved or doesn't seem to be providing the value to the youth or the community, I mean, it can always be pulled, but probably better sense when the next round of student councilors come through.
Thanks, Mayor Banco. My preference on this would be, I think it's time to evolve it in the same kind of train of thought that Councillor McKenna brought up. I think it's not fair to invite someone to these meetings, ask them to read the reports, ask them to sit through 2-3 hours of meeting, and then we can't give them a vote because that's the way the municipal act's worded. So no matter how active and engaged they are, their participation at the table is always going to be limited. And I feel like that's been a disengaging factor for some of the students. Also, the recruitment's been a challenge. So I don't know that there's a huge demand for it. I would love to see for every committee that doesn't have a requirement under the Municipal Act or some other piece of legislation that requires 18 plus or voting age to participate on the committee, I'd like to see our age lowered. I think that for a lot of these students, you know, depending on what your passion is, I can almost guarantee we've got a committee of the municipality that could use you and you could share your passion on. And if we could give them a vote at that level, we could have them coming and presenting to council in that aspect. I think that would be a much more productive experience for the students than from the student councilor program as it's been going. Councillor McKenna, I saw your hand there.
Yeah, no, it's a good discussion. I don't criticize the intent. I think council has, I've not done my job because these are young leaders. The youth who sign up for this, when you look at their resumes and how active and involved they are, if we were to say, if it was to continue, and I would support it continue if it's a leadership development bent, that we actually go in with a pre-interview about what they want to learn and what skills they want to develop as future leaders, and that we can offer some of those skill development, then and be more deliberate about it, because it's just, for me, it was too casual. It's just, they came and they said, some of them do participate more than others, but if it is because these are our future leaders. So if we could add something to that program, then I would like to see it continue. But the casual nature we approach it now, some benefit, some don't, some come, some don't. It's just too, it lacks direction for me.
Yeah, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, just a question. When we have the kids, they apply, and I think we sat down with them as a group, this group, a couple of times. I know I've done it before. Does this count towards? They have a requirement for so many volunteer hours through. Does this count towards that? Do you know that?
That is a great question. I'd have to ask Deputy Clerk Bennett. She kind of oversees them. I'm not sure if she has an answer to that or not.
Yeah, it should. That would be an incentive.
Deputy Clerk Bennett.
To date, I don't recall signing any the forms that they get at the high school for community hours, but certainly it is something that we could consider. Just to date, I think the students that have attended had already received their hours in another fashion, but something that could be considered for sure.
Thanks, Councillor Dwyer.
Thanks. Yeah, you know, having seen quite a few of these fresh little faces around the horseshoe, I mean, these kids are not the ones that are missing their volunteer hours. Like, these are the keeners that filled up their 50-hour commitment in the first week of school, and they're here because they really want to be here. I think if we do have some that are interested in sitting around the horseshoe, then great. But Councillor McGuire, you make an excellent point. You know, if there's a better way that we can involve them through other committees that gives them an actual legitimate vote and can make them feel empowered to make decisions, I think that's a great opportunity. But I think you leave as many options open for these kids as possible. And hopefully we get some more little keeners at the table. And I'm happy to leave the program in the policy today.
All right, so I'm hearing the program needs more structure. The program needs a bit more stuff on paper to give it that structure. Does that give us as much direction as we need tonight? And then if we could get follow up on on what committees we could lower the age to 14 for, that would open up other opportunities. Director Costello.
Just to remind council, we do have a committee appointment bylaw that specifically denotes Canadian citizenship, 18 years of age, must be a resident of Smiths Falls. So that is part of our committee appointment bylaw. If this is something that council wants to proceed down, then that's something that would have to be amended, as well as obviously terms of reference for various boards and committees. So we can look into that.
Okay, good point. Sorry, I didn't realize it was outside the scope of this review. Is that something the committee has consensus for? I'm seeing some nodding heads. Okay, yes. Okay, that would be great. Thanks, Director Costello. So we'll move on to 4 agenda items on special meeting agendas. Who wants to kick this one off? Councillor Dwyer.
Yeah, can I just get some clarity? Because I'm not really quite sure what this means. Is this like walk-on items where a member of staff is going to do a verbal report and seek direction, or is this a counselor who is bringing forward an item without a report? What is the intent of this provision?
The intent is, I think, maybe twofold, Councillor Dwyer. The last time this was debated, council wanted to know why we had special meetings and how the items got added to the agenda. If it was simply through time-sensitive things that came up in an emergency nature, obviously those are things we can't. We have to deal with. But then there are some things that end up on a special committee of the whole nature, without really any rationale for why. So I think council was just wanting to know how the items got on a special committee of the whole agenda, whether it was just staff going through the CAO, or if council members, elected officials could add items at the meeting. So I think we're just looking to put a little more clarity around adding items to a special committee of the whole, either before it's scheduled as well as when it is scheduled.
Mr. Chair, so a follow-up question, Carrie, what's the recommendation?
At this point, since it's a special committee of the whole, we've always, in my history here, we've always looked at it that we don't add items onto a special committee of the whole unless obviously that there is a very time-sensitive nature to it or it's an emergency. But usually we try to deal with items at special meetings, specifically if it's a special meeting, we're holding the meeting for that item or items. So if council wishes to remain status quo and only deal with items that are on the agenda, or that don't have an emergency provision, or do they want to give the chair some autonomy to add items as they deem fit?
Maybe a follow-up question, Director Costello. What's the current process for adding items to the agenda? I know anybody could add a walk-on item when we do the approval, but what's the best practice for that process right now?
Right now we have management agendas. Every 2 weeks, management gets together and discuss items. We discuss the items. We decide at that point if it's something that goes forward to committee of the whole. At that point, reports are prepared and they're vetted through CAO Morris. So any agenda items currently are vetted through the CAO. Items obviously that can be dealt with operationally are done so and don't hit the council table. But right now they're vetted through the CAO and then they end up on the committee of the whole agenda.
So
And
if,
obviously at meetings, council members can also request that the deputy clerk add items.
so if a member of council or committee wanted something on the agenda, they contact the CAO and then CAO Morris would incorporate it into the grand scheme of things is what I'm hearing. So that, so then I guess, yeah, is there any proposed changes here or any strong thoughts? I'm not seeing, so that status quo is working or? Okay, great. So nodding heads for the status quo for item 4. With that, I believe we've got to the end of the report. Is there any last things we should give feedback on before moving on? Not seeing Councillor Dwyer.
Not to create more work for Carrie, but Carrie, do you think to help illustrate kind of how the new procedural bylaw would work in our context, do you think it would be possible when you present the next staff report to put together an agenda package that would kind of demonstrate what our new process would be?
I could certainly
Just to help
try.
illustrate?
Yep, I could certainly try. Yep. Yeah, and I'm hoping, I didn't want to bring forward the bylaw as it looks right now with the track changes because it's a lot and I needed more direction to be able to put the bylaw together. So for the next committee of the whole, I'm going to put together a clean bylaw with the changes we've discussed this evening. We'll have a couple more areas for discussion, 2 that were brought up tonight being consent agenda as well as closed session. And I'll do some research from other municipalities to bring forward some examples, maybe of wordings of their bylaw. And Councillor Dwyer, if I can put together kind of a agenda or, a run through, I certainly will do so.
Okay, that's great. So last call for questions, comments. Seeing none, I will be passing the chair to Councillor McKenna because I've got another meeting to go to tonight. So I appreciate everybody's contributions to that discussion and through the month of May. So have a great rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Chair McGuire. You did a great job getting us through that. I appreciate it and good luck at your meeting. We're moving on now to 8.2, rights to disconnect policy, which I love the title of. And Director Costello, you're going to just give us a brief overview of that.
Yes, will do. This is a perfect example of an item that could be on a consent agenda. This is a policy that Council is legislated to pass under Bill 27, Working for Workers Act. It's a policy that municipalities are to put in place that allows their employees to disconnect from work, email, text messages, things of that nature, without any fear of reprisal. Happy to say that this has never been an issue here at the town of Smith Falls. However, we are legislated to pass a policy. So in your package that was distributed to you all last week, there is a draft policy attached. And this is legislated for any employers with 25 or more employees. So obviously that does include town staff. So the policy outlines the purpose, which is Bill 27. The policy would become effective tomorrow. If this is approved by council, it would be passed or adopted by bylaw this evening, as it needs to be in effect by June 1st. And like I said, it does give employees the right to disconnect from work-related tasks without fear that they're going to be disciplined in any fashion. However, it does give employers the right to still be able to contact them for various reasons regarding if they need to contact them to perform or to come into work to perform their work, as well as what else was there? It also outlines that they're not required to take work home outside their regular hours, not respond to text messages or emails. And it also goes in it allows the supervisor management, it details how they can communicate to them, but how that they should not be, they do not have to reply to them. However, if we are looking for scheduling, that we can contact them, or if we need to short notice to fill in somebody who is ill, if there's any unforeseen circumstances that arise, as well as in emergencies, that we still can have those right to contact employees. And it also outlines that other employees, not just the employer or the supervisor, but that other employees as well as members of council that be respectful of others' right to disconnect and not expect responses from workers during their off hours. It also gives the employee some provisions about turning on their automatic replies so that other staff members are aware that they're not in the office. So it's a draft policy, and I will say that we've worked with all the clerks in Lanark County to come up with this policy. So all of the policies that you may see will mimic each other through the county, and they are being passed through municipalities across the province.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Mayor Panko, Sean, Councillor Panko, Mayor Brian Panko.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Director Costello. And this is, I believe policy is probably long overdue. And in frankness and fairness, I mean, those of us who work in the municipal world, and I consider all of us to be in that, we have a habit of checking emails on a very frequent basis, responding to phone calls no matter when they come in, or text messages at various hours. And I respect that as a expectation of council, council members to a great extent. But I think in all fairness, staff, as this is their full-time job, do need that separation and recognition that there are times, of course, any one of us on council will likely send an email or a text to a senior staff member after hours or on weekends. If we get an inquiry from a member of the community, we tend to send it off. We don't expect an answer back, and we have no reason to expect an answer back. But I know from responses I receive off hours that staff are still engaged. And even though the answer could wait until the next business day, I know they're engaged. And while it's a commitment to the community, I also recognize the merit in them having separated time with family and away from work and for their own health. So I'm very happy to support this policy.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Alford?
I absolutely support this. I do think, and maybe Carrie said it in there somewhere, that staff need also to be mindful of that they need the time off, and that they, just because one of us may email them because we want to get it off hours, there is no expectation, and they should do what they can to have a balance in their lives. So I don't know if that's written in the policy, but it should be. We are very fortunate to have the staff that we have. And during the pandemic, every employer has gotten more than their share of productivity of people who are working from home. So I absolutely support this, and just want to remind the staff to take care of themselves, even while someone is emailing or texting them. There's no expectation for them to get back to anyone.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll have consensus on this. The only question I had was around our work from home policy. Will it reference this in spite of our work from home policy, which we do have? This super, they're complementary. They don't contradict each other is all I'm asking.
That's correct. The policy specifically outlines that during normal office hours. So once, for an administrative person such as myself, once 4:30 comes around, if I choose to respond, that's up to me, but there'd be no expectation, whether from a supervisor or elected official or even a coworker, to expect a response.
Great. Okay, I saw a lot of nodding heads, and this will come up, I believe, at a council meeting this evening.
Correct.
Thank you. The new 8.3 new playground equipment, Director Manhire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As council is aware, as a priority of council, we're looking at improving the assets in our parks. Playground equipment is a piece of that. We've had evaluations done, and the two that are selected through this process are high need areas. So we'd really like to kind of move on this. The process was to put out an RFP. We designed criteria around that RFP, sent it to a number of manufacturers who had inquired, as well as anybody who wanted to pick it up. We had 7 packages picked up. We had 2 proposals submitted. Staff then took those proposals and put them on Speak Up Smiths Falls, and were elated by the response from Speak Up Smiths Falls. We had over 1,074 check the site out, and we had 869 responses. The overwhelming response in support of was for the option number 1, which is in the report as a recommendation going forward. There is a significant lead time in supply chain for playground equipment. So this is the reason why we're kind of bringing it forward now, looking for direction. And if supported, we can place the order tomorrow and be able to establish delivery and installation time.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Wow. Over 800 respondents, and I think you've got 97% people that looked at that out of that number are preferring option 1. We need playground equipment in those 2 locations. The sooner the better. So I wholeheartedly support the staff recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Alford.
Yeah, I think this is the people who use our playgrounds have spoken. I was disappointed to see that no one from Natural Playgrounds submitted anything. I do, and my colleague isn't here tonight, Councillor Allen, but I do think there is still the opportunity to add some natural features, just even if they're in small berms. And so I would hope that that could be advanced as well, as when we're working down in there. It doesn't take a whole lot to make a little hill for somebody to roll down and plant some more trees or something like that. But no, I'm supportive of staff recommendation.
Thank you. I've got Mayor Panko, then Councillor Dwyer.
Yeah, I too very supportive and respect the will of the people here and their choices. A great outcome. Eric, can you just maybe speak for a moment just to the area Highland Corbett? And I mean, this will be a significant enhancement there, but I guess if you can speak to the broader plan to redevelop that space, and recognizing that this will be a piece of a larger progressive development within that area at some point.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, the development of a park is more than just the playground equipment. It's the way that the public engages with that space. So Highland Corbett is a great example where we're trying to create social spaces as well as spaces where you could bring your children and play, and the community can come together. So the playground structures that we're looking to put in are one component of the redevelopment of that space. As again, council is aware, there was a public consultation through with the community specifically around kind of needs, and we're evaluating those needs. And the next step, and to kind of go back a little bit to Councillor Alford's comment, the next step around development of the parks and some of those features and adding those features that add quality of life are going to be coming forward as future recommendations. So this is going to be an ongoing process, and you know, we think that the products that we're looking to add here will add value, and we'll continue to develop those spaces to be social gathering spaces, as well as spaces that add to recreational opportunity and social opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dwyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. I noticed in the report, we don't have an age range for these structures. Can you clarify what the usable age range is on options 1 for Victoria Park and Highland Court?
They're designed through the RFP. They were designed for 5 to 12.
Okay. Okay, and the surface that's going on these structures, can you provide some indication as to what that is? Is it that rubber membrane that's fully accessible?
There it is, but so accessibility was another one of the components in the RFP. So all of the areas have to be fully accessible as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm hugely supportive of it. I think these are great options. I really can't wait to see them go in. You know, my boys and I were walking through Victoria Park yesterday, and they're so keen to see a new play structure there. We had talked about when we were back debating the merits of a taco truck, that this structure is actually going to be located closer to where the swings are. It looks like we had just planted some trees down there. Is it likely that those trees are going to have to be removed, or will we be working the playground structures around the trees?
No, great question through the chair. The space has been dedicated for this purpose, and we feel that it's a much better space. It's fenced from the street. It's farther away from the parking area. So we feel that this is a very good use of that space. As part of the next steps, we're also looking at this, where the current structure is, to find the best use for that space as well, with all of the different amenities that are in Victoria Park. So we're looking to add more value added in that space.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it looks, and I'm not surprised that there's consensus, and I'm not surprised that Councillor Dwyer's very enthusiastic about this. We heard about it almost 4 years ago at our strategic plan. I'm pretty sure you brought it up then. So please proceed. And I believe this will come up at the council meeting following this meeting as well, to award this RFP. We're moving on now to 8.4, street naming Maple Ridge subdivision. Mr. Grenke, nice to see you. Please take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. This report pertains to the subsequent phases of the Maple Ridge subdivision being developed by Campbell's Trucking on the southwest end of the town. Earlier this spring, Council authorized the execution of a subdivision agreement to accommodate a 9-lot phase at the end of Wood Avenue, which is being developed in conjunction with about 17 lots that were approved through a previous subdivision approval all along Wood Avenue. Staff and the developer are now nearing completion on a subdivision agreement for the next phase of the subdivision, which incorporates 48 new lots on a new street connecting to and to the immediate west of Wood Avenue. Condition 4 of the draft approval is that the new street be named to the satisfaction of the town. The developer has provided the town's road naming policy, which includes naming conventions as well as a list of pre-approved street names. And the developer was asked to provide a preferred name as well as alternates for council's consideration, which have now been received by staff earlier this month. As noted in the planning clerk's report, the developer has proposed a hyphenated name, Campbell Curry, as his preferred name for the new street. While Campbell Curry is not currently on the street naming list, the developer has requested the names in recognition of his business, which has received recognition from the Chamber of Commerce, and the second part in honor of the developer's grandfather. The proposed name at 15 characters is within the policy's length guideline, and the policy does not speak to hyphenated names. The alternative street names, Fleming and Curry on its own in this case, are proposed by the developer as alternates if the first one is not preferred. And these names are within the are pre-approved by the street naming policy. At this point, staff seek the committee's direction on the proposed name for the street. Council's desired name will be communicated in accordance with the policy to the public in an ad, as well as to identify departments and agencies, including emergency services and other municipalities. If the developer's proposed name, Campbell Curry, is selected and remains recommended following the notification period, council will be asked to pass a bylaw to amend the policy to add this name as an approved name. If council prefers either of the other two names, then a resolution will be presented for council following completion of the notice period. And I understand that that Fleming is the developer's second choice. If council prefers either Fleming or Curry, Fleming would be the developer's choice. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Grenke. Councillor Alford, and then Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel like we just had this discussion not that long ago over some of the Parkview streets, Whitcomb and Graham. I feel the same way this time as I did last, in that we have an approved street naming, and there have been names on here for many years. My own opinion for my colleagues' consideration would be that of Sergeant Major Jack Omer Rabb. He's on the list actually twice. Once as a veteran. He was with the Canadian militia and the armed forces in Korea between 1948 and 69. I know several of you are already familiar with Jack Rabb. He was a champion of all the efforts of Branch 95, including the construction of that Legion Hall. He was a mentor to students through Remembrance Day programming and the Lest We Forget program. He was also Citizen of the Year in 1984, as was his wife, Enid, 10 years later. He contributed time after time after time to this community that he loved, including construction of play structures at Lower Reach. His organization of most of the Settlers' Days parades, also active in organizing minor ball hockey, Reed Lakes Boy Scouts, and raised thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for good works in Smiths Falls. He also won accolades and awards for his work with Branch 95 over decades. So Jack was a regimental sergeant major in the 2nd Black Watch Battalion. And I would ask my colleagues to consider him, as he is not only a veteran, he is also a Citizen of the Year, and all the other things that I have named for him, including the fact that his wife is also on the list 10 years after he is good as Citizen of the Year. So in terms of how I feel about, I respect and thank the Campbell family for their contributions in building this, but I don't feel any different about who names these streets this time than I did last time.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Yep, hard to argue with that. I'd point out that Enid is still part of the community. She sits on the Evergreen Avenue committee with me. Great choice, and fully support it.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I love the suggestion, and very familiar with the Rabb family through most of my life, and I think it would also be a unique opportunity to be naming a street and commemorating a street when with Enid still with us. And it's probably, I guess we look at the names on here. I'm not sure if there's any other names other than Citizens of the Year that would that still be with us. And probably it would be hard pressed to find a couple who committed more to this town for as long as they have. And to Councillor Brennan's point, Enid is still doing so.
Thank you. Any other comments? So we've got 3 councillors suggesting not to name it Campbell Curry and to go back to the list, and they've chosen a very worthy name. I can't say anything more than that unless Councillor Dwyer has other suggestions. That would be enough of us to move this forward and go back to the Mr. Campbell and thank him very much, as Councillor Alford has pointed out. But off of our list, it looks like the Rabb Street or Drive or whatever it will end up being is our preferred choice, and you will have a number of steps to follow, Mr. Grenke, to and come back at some point in the near future with the results of public consultations, I believe.
Yes.
Is that enough direction for you?
I have my direction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. 8.5, Rainbow Crosswalk with Mr. McMunn, Director McMunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, members of council. So if council recalls, last summer in and around the end of July or early part of July, sorry, council received correspondence from Trinity United Church here locally in town requesting a rainbow crosswalk, or perhaps what some of us might know them as would be a pride crosswalk, at a location in town of council's choosing. So this report, council did direct staff back last summer for staff to bring a council report forward. There's been a couple of things that have delayed bringing this report. One has been just trying to set time aside to meet with Reverend Christopher Ryan from Trinity United Church, as well as consult with the committee from the Smith Falls Pride Committee. So that's all recently happened over the last number of months. And then the other thing that's somewhat delayed the process is just trying to find a suitable location. Originally, I had interest in coming back to council with the proposal to incorporate a pride crosswalk or a rainbow crosswalk into the PXO, the pedestrian crossover that's going to be right out here at Church Street at Beckwith, crossing Church Street from Town Hall across to Burger King, we'll say. MTO, we know that that Beckwith Street, being Highway 15, is a connecting link. MTO didn't necessarily have any concerns with it, albeit it does present some operational challenges in that PXO will be a concrete surface for the crosswalk. And we felt from an operational standpoint, it would be difficult for the paint for the rainbow crosswalk itself to possibly adhere to the concrete, and why put concrete in to turn around and paint it different colors. So given that fact, and the feeling that I had that council may want to consider something close in proximity to Town Hall and close in proximity to Beckwith Street, given the fact that it's going to be fully reconstructed right from the south end of the bridge all the way up to Elmsley Street. So I thought it perhaps maybe a good idea to have it adjacent to Beckwith Street. So that led to one of the options being Church Street on both sides, so crossing in a north to south direction. The other location that was suggested by Trinity Church, and they don't have a preference one way or the other, would be over at Russell and Market. So the four quadrants of the intersection right adjacent to the church. Operationally, that location does have some challenges in that the asphalt is in not the greatest repair currently, and to paint it, I think would have a hard time standing up the test of time over the winter and through the spring. I just don't think I don't think that's the best location for that reason alone. So anyway, so that's pretty well it. Like I said, we consulted with Trinity United Church. That's where the correspondence came from. We consulted with Smith Falls Pride. They are in full support of a rainbow crosswalk. It will be something that they'll be able to focus on when they get back around to having their Pride festivities here in town, and possibly an opportunity for this council to obviously this would hit the media, so I think it would be a good thing for council to be involved from an approval standpoint, should council wish to approve it. And then perhaps when it is installed, there could be a ribbon cutting of some kind or something along that nature. So with that, I'll stop talking. I'll turn it over to the chair. Happy to take any customers, Councillor McKenna.
Thank you. Councillor Dwyer, why don't you start us off?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's a fabulous idea. I can't wait to see this done. And I'm glad Paul's on it, and that we're finally going to get a rainbow flag crosswalk. I will say, though, I would like it to be a little bit more prominent. I was kind of disappointed in the cross section that you showed for Church Street and Beckwith, that it didn't include all four ways. And I can appreciate the methodology about putting it close to Town Hall. But is there any opportunity to look at putting it kind of at the Russell Street intersection, all four ways, or really my preference would be at Main and Beckwith? Or are there design limitations to the asphalt platform there that would inhibit our ability to do that?
Director McMahon?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe Russell Street, sorry, so trying to familiarize myself with the geography here, but that is a signalized intersection as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so there will be concrete crosswalks going in east-west across King Street. So the same could be argued for the challenges with the pedestrian crossover that crosses Beckwith at Church. So MTO doesn't have any concerns with it, but with the brush surface of the concrete and the application of a rainbow of colors, if you will, across that crosswalk, I believe it would present some challenges.
Okay, for sure. Maybe just a point of clarity though, because the Russell Street and Beckwith is mostly already done. Granted, there's a little bit of work that's creeping into that intersection, but Main and Beckwith is totally complete. And last time I walked it, I'm pretty sure it was asphalt, is it not?
Yes, it would be asphalt under the phase 1 construction. However,
oh, my
Main
apologies.
Street,
I see what you're saying is that there's an upgrade coming.
there is an upgrade coming for concrete crosswalks. So yes.
Okay. No,
I just feel we have better application on a pavement asphalt surface than we would on a concrete surface. And,
no, that's fair. And you know what, to further that point, I mean, the pride flag that we have in Carleton Place is painted on a concrete surface, and it is very, very slippery. We have problems every year with slip and falls on that surface. So by any means, let's not put it on concrete, because I don't think that's a desirable place.
But definitely in favor. I have Councillor Alford, then Mayor Panko.
Yeah, I'm going to support staff's recommendation for the church in Beckwith for a lot of the reasons that Paul said, but I also like the prominence close to Town Hall that the rainbow crossing is going to get. I love the look of the quadrant down at Russell near Trinity, but I honestly think the prominence for the pride flag close to Town Hall sends a message. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Panko?
And Director McMahon, can you just remind me which crossings will have a concrete crosswalk, and is it both crossings at those intersections or just the one?
it would, through the chair, it would be the signalized intersections from the south end up to Russell, where we're switching over to to phase 2. So all the signalized intersections coming up through, and then the pedestrian crossover, which will be at Church Street going east-west, and then down at Elmsley Street as well on Beckwith. Okay, so basically it'll be concrete crosswalks at every signalized intersection, and as well as a pedestrian crossover on Beckwith. That's right. So really, it does really take Beckwith out of the equation, and I guess that's why you have the recommendation that you do. Yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to see it on Beckwith, but I guess having the adjacent to Beckwith, at least, I think, is a very meaningful act. So, and being close to Town Hall makes sense. So I will support that recommendation.
Councillor Brennan just gave a thumbs up. Director McMahon?
Yeah, the one thing I just wanted to add with, like from an operational standpoint, I think the adjacent street on Church Street on those two crossings will hold up a little better over the course of the year from the application of paint, just because Beckwith Street is such a high traffic area with a lot of smaller vehicles and truck traffic and whatnot. So I think that alone will serve for the crossing to stand the test of time over the year until we can get around to reapplication the following spring, summer. Yeah.
Okay. I too am very supportive of the staff recommendation. I did have that footnote that I sent out that I believe there is an updated pride flag. So the one that the pride community worldwide is adopting. So it depends on just which flag. And I asked Trinity if they had any objection to the more modern and inclusive pride flag, but that will be determined. So you have full support from council and the location. So congratulations. And thank you for reaching out to both of those groups. I appreciate that. I believe now Councillor Dwyer is going to step out of the meeting, and we'll discuss 8.6, the road maintenance and development agreement with our friends at Rideau Lakes. Back to you, Director McMahon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So myself and Senior Planner Carl Grinke have been, as well as Malcolm Morris, we've been in negotiations over the last number of months with the folk at Rideau Lakes Township, trying to formalize a historic agreement that we've had with respect to Broadview Avenue West. So I guess the easiest way to say it is there's been a handshake deal over the years where the town would perform winter control operations down on Broadview Avenue, right from Herald all the way to the far west end. And that was somewhat of a reciprocatory agreement in that the township would grade the gravel surface road when required and maintain it that way. And there were some other operational things that each municipality did from a maintenance perspective. So what we know now with with Bellamy Farms Phase 2, Parkview Homes, and through when Troy Dunlop was here, he negotiated with Parkview to have a connection of Staples Boulevard to Broadview Avenue West, which is a great thing. That does afford an alternate access and egress to those different phases of that development. So that's a win for the town. Parkview Avenue will be responsible for the upgrade of that road from Herald to Staples Boulevard. And then there will be a short section west of that, if you will, where the two homes that are in the township are just immediately west of Staples. That the township, through this agreement, is suggesting that they will upgrade to similar or same cross section of the balance of the road that Parkview is going to upgrade. So the challenge with the far west end is for winter control operations to get turned around, because there's no turning circle down at that end. So to try to facilitate plowing with a single axle or tandem truck and to safely turn around is a challenge. So in the schedule to the report, it is noted in there that they're going to they're proposing to fully support that from a capital perspective to bring that west end up to similar, same standard as the east section. And I guess, you know, in the schedule, we outlined the different maintenance arrangements that we've negotiated. It simply makes sense from a logistical standpoint that the town would continue to winter maintain that section of road in its entirety. Just because we have our winter control fleet out in response to storms, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the township to dispatch to come all the way into town to service that. So that's the one big thing. And then, you know, the township's going to be responsible for grass cutting, you know, shoulder maintenance and brush control along the edge of the road. So there's a number of different maintenance activities that we feel are equitable through this agreement. And then the big thing that we kind of honed in on was, like any road or any infrastructure we put in place, it does have a service life and it doesn't last forever. So when we get in a position down the road, no pun intended, to afford some capital dollars to rehabilitate the road or to reconstruct the road, what seems like an apportioned percentage that seems fair and equitable based on the use of the roadway. So what we do know is there's two homes that are west of Staples. The likelihood of Broadview Avenue ever extending to the west and connecting to Highway 15 is slim to nil, for the simple fact that there is no developable lands down that way because it's all part of the watershed and it's a wetland down in there. So it really comes down to who's going to use the road mostly. We know where the municipal boundary is. It's partway down Broadview Avenue, about halfway between Herald and Staples. So from there going west is about 320 meters of roadway, and that's what we're dealing with through this agreement. I think it would be fair to say that our municipality, the town of Smith Falls, would use that road more so than our neighboring municipality being Rideau Lakes. So I think that's a fair assumption. So with all that in play, we negotiated terms for capital investment moving forward of 87.5% Town of Smith Falls and 12.5% Rideau Lakes Township, which myself, Carl, Malcolm all agreed on, and our counterparts at the township agreed that we would take those provisions to our respective councils. And should council approve this evening, it's obviously contingent on the township's meeting that they're having this evening as well. It's on their agenda as well this evening for discussion. So with that, again, I'll stop talking, and through the chair, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Alford.
No questions, Mr. Chair. Just congratulations, Paul. I admire when our staff go out and make sure that Smith Falls has equitable arrangements with its neighbors. So I'm fully supportive of your recommendation.
Any other? It's thumbs up all around. You've really paved the way forward for us to approve this. So thank you for that. And that, again, will come up at a future council meeting. And thank you to Mr. Grenke and Mr. Morris as well for their work on that. I think it's back to you again, Mr. McMahon, on 8.7, Delegated Authority Temporary Traffic Provisions.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be quick with this one in the essence of time here this evening. So this one's somewhat administrative in that currently we do not have a consolidated traffic bylaw in town. We have a multitude of different bylaws to address certain traffic related issues, if you will, around town, or things that require bylaw to support. What we don't have is a mechanism in any one of those individual bylaws that speak to emergency situations, or perhaps the situation of reconstructing Beckwith Street. You know, when we get into putting tenders out and awarding contracts and starting the work, it's somewhat irrespective, I guess, of what type of effect that construction may have on traffic. So what we've learned recently, and I know the mayor sent me an email a while back from a concerned resident over on George Street, and we've received some similar email correspondence from parties around town, primarily George Street area, where they have seen an increase of traffic solely due to the fact that Beckwith Street is fully closed. So people still need to get around and get to where they need to go. So like I said before, this delegated authority would give myself authority to impose temporary traffic conditions for the likes of Beckwith Street reconstruction, to say add stop signs to Park Street, or sorry, to George Street, or any street for that matter, if it was necessitated due to some work that we were doing. What we do know is if we can't just go out and start throwing out stop signs without some type of a bylaw pass, because should there be an accident, there's nothing in the Highway Traffic Act to support it, and somebody could appeal that and they would win in front of a judge. So that's basically what this report is about. If council gives some delegated authority to my office, being the Director of Public Works and Utilities, not me specifically, but the position, for now and in the future. And what I would like to do, just for council's interest, is work on a consolidated traffic bylaw and bring it all into one bylaw. So when we do make changes, it's easy just to change that master bylaw going forward. And I will note that many other municipalities or neighboring municipalities have delegated authority such as this for those instances.
Okay, thank you. I saw one thumbs up, 2, 3. Mayor Penko, did you have a comment? No?
Just brief.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Director McMahon, and I think it's the right solution in unusual situations, I guess, really. And in this situation, I appreciate you circling back with the concern that expressed to me a few weeks ago, and then now having the opportunity to provide actions that can help in these unusual situations. So I just appreciation for the work you've done here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm supportive of this as well. Can you help the people on George Street, the residents there, in the short term with this kind of a decision already? Or you probably have?
Well, I haven't, for the simple fact that these are regulatory signs and I
All
can't
right.
place them in the absence of a bylaw being passed. So I don't know if Nadine's still on or if she's got this on the agenda for council this evening, but she does. Okay, perfect.
So it could happen fairly quickly.
It could happen fairly quickly, yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that and unanimous support. Now we're moving on to 8.8, exemption to flag policy. Deputy Clerk Bennett.
Thank you. So tonight I'm just here to seek council direction with respect to a few correspondence items that we received from some local organizations that would like to raise a flag on the community flagpole. As council's aware, the community flagpole is in the construction zone in front of the town hall. And we currently have the Ukraine flag flying there. So I have consulted with Director Manhire. And you'll note under option 1, there are some items there for council's consideration. So we're seeking council direction to provide an exemption to the current flag policy to allow a flag to be flown at Laurel Reach Park, using a pole down there as the community flagpole in the interim during construction, as well as an exemption to allow a second location for one time only to permit the Shriners flag to be flown at the Smith Falls Memorial Community Center. And that's in celebration of their 150th anniversary and Shriners International Awareness Week. And lastly, further to that, we're asking council to support an amendment to commit 2 flagpoles for community flag raisings moving forward. We are finding that at times we may get 2 requests at the same time, and both very important events or awareness campaigns for organizations that the municipality supports. So we're seeking council direction on those items tonight.
Thank you. Mayor Panko, why don't you start us off?
Thanks, Nadine. I support option 1. I think we get frequent requests from some great organizations to give them an opportunity to promote their cause and to celebrate their successes and milestones. And I think it's important to be able to accommodate that now, and having 2 community flags goals going forward just enables us to do more. And I don't think we need to do less. So I support the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Alford. Thumbs up on that one. Everybody is supportive of your recommendation. Deputy Clerk Bennett, thank you.
Thank you.
8.9, the annual building permit report. Chief Cheeseborough, welcome back.
Welcome, Mr. Chair, and thank you. And please forgive me as I go through this report. This is a first-time building report in consultation with the chief building official and our treasurer. My recommendation tonight is that council receive the following report: annual building permit fee report and statistics for 2021. The purpose of the report is that council to update council on the building permits for 2021 to ensure compliance with the Building Code Act. In accordance with the Act, building permit fees are set to cover the costs associated with servicing building permits and enforcing Act and Code. The Building Code Reserve Fund was established in order to safeguard the town's ability to continue to enforce the Act and Code and avert passing on the associated costs to the general taxation. The following is a list of the major projects that were accomplished in 2021. There was 130 permits that were issued, 33 new builds and startups, and 90 apartment units. As indicated by the list below, there was a good number on Brockville Street. Frere Drive had some good development, and the downtown certainly experienced some large development with the list that's contained. Hershey Drive and Lombard Street also had development on it last year. The 2020 year-end balance of the building department reserve was $484,308, less a transfer of the 2020 indirect costs of $92,448, plus the 2021 interest of $3590. As we have now completed our 2021 year-end audit, the 2021 surplus within the building reserve has been transferred to the reserve in the amount of $23,728. Balance of this reserve as of December 31st was $419,179. With council's direction, the 2021 indirect support costs have totaled $110,829, which are detailed on the next page, will be transferred from the building reserve, services reserve to the tax supported capital reserve. The tax supported rate stabilization reserve, as indicated by Treasurer Koziel, is at its maximum target balance as per the bylaw. Reserve management policy leaving a balance of $308,350. The balance of the, as of December 31st, the building services obligatory reserve fund is now at $932,464 and has met the target balance. Reserve management policy is $1,350,000. Estimated 5-year operational expenditures. As per the bylaw, a bylaw to authorize internal borrowing respecting the LED street lighting project of $535,000 was transferred from this account on March 19th, 2021 to fund this project and will be repaid annually at a rate of $103,937 over the approximately 5.25 years. The transfer will occur June 30th of every year for the remainder of the term. The following is a breakdown of the associated costs for the building services with professional fees, salary, wages, mapping, advertising, office supplies, telephone, photocopier, postage, travel, and membership. Total building permit revenue for 2021 was $328,530. And the indirect costs associated with the building department are listed below, which have totaled $110,829. We did have consultation, as it indicated, from Treasurer Koziel and Chief Billing Official Sutherland. There is a link to the strategic plan, Objective 4, growth and expansion. That is the report for this evening.
Comments or questions, Councillor Alford? And
Thanks for the information. Another good news story.
And your council is being asked to receive it. Any objections to receiving this report? It is nice as we reach the end of our term, the health of some of our funds it's in good shape, and I appreciate the report, Chief, and thanks to all the hard work of the planning staff and company.
Thank you.
So we have received that. Thank you. Now we're on to 8:10, and Mr. Granke is going to come back and talk about Bill 109, as we asked him to do or at a more recent council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This report is presented for council's information and to advise committee on several changes to the Planning Act and associated legislation that will have some operational impact on the planning process. As council knows, on February 8th, 2022, the Ontario Affordability Task Force published a report with 55 recommendations intended to improve the supply of housing. On March 30th, the Ontario government introduced Bill 109, the More Homes for Everyone Act, that carried forward some of the recommendations and focused primarily on the municipal process. As the bill was given royal assent a little over 2 weeks after it was presented, this report is presented for the committee's information and summarizes the key features that may affect town operations in the coming months and years. The most significant operational change is proposed to be in the site plan approvals process. The bill amends the Planning Act to require that the site plan approvals be delegated to staff or another municipal official. About a year ago, council approved a new site plan bylaw that delegated approval for smaller, more minor applications while retaining approval for larger applications, so residential units more than 4 units in size. We understand that there will no longer be a statutory opportunity to potentially to bump up potentially contentious applications to council. In the coming weeks, staff will prepare and present amendments to the site plan control bylaw to align with the legislation. And then we will, of course, review with legal counsel to ensure that our T's are crossed and our I's dotted with respect to procedural matters. One other significant change is the requirement to reimburse planning fees on a sliding scale when planning decisions are not made within a certain period of time. While planning fees are estimated based on a cost recovery basis, the change in a practical sense is also highly symbolic. The challenging thing we see is that there's a wide variety of reasons why applications in every municipality often do take longer, and many of these are outside the control of a municipality, such as if we're waiting for provincial or agency comments, or alternatively, we're waiting for revisions to a site plan. One thing that often does happen as well is an issue gets identified at a public meeting, or the developer wants to make a change to a proposal. This is a normal part of the process, and but with that, things sometimes do get put on hold while we collaboratively work through files, ultimately with the objective of presenting a better project to the public, council, and developer, and thereby potentially avoiding an appeal. To the best of our knowledge, there's no exception to this fee reimbursement. So it does seem likely, according to analysis I've seen in other municipalities, that there will probably be a negative impact on our revenues to consider in the budget, or alternatively, that certain decisions end up being rushed, which may also result in appeals. The implications and mechanics of what this means, as well as how we track the process, will be worked out over the coming months. And I understand this won't come into effect until January of next year. There's also a number of other interesting changes that are detailed in the report, including the ability to revive a subdivision whose draft approval had been lapsed, and potential changes to the regulations that scope out permissible conditions of subdivision approval. We won't really know the effects of this until regulations are presented that highlight which conditions they're being looked at, but that will likely come down the pipeline at some point. The bill also proposes a community infrastructure and housing accelerator process that appears to be a sort of municipally initiated minister zoning order, as well as a number of other municipal reporting and tracking initiatives that we will need to follow. Based on staff's analysis and other analyses that we've seen, it is not clear that the changes will, on their own, chart a path toward creating housing affordability. However, that may come later and separately. Given that all major parties in the upcoming provincial election have identified the need to support housing and support the broad goal of the provincial task force of enabling the 1.5 million new homes in the next 10 years, it seems likely that there will be further changes to the Planning Act and planning process that will follow in the coming years and that we will familiarize ourselves with. At this point, we do have some changes that are brand new, and this report is presented for council's information. And as future changes or come up, then we'll certainly be reporting back to council, keeping you updated and enacting any of our own policy changes that we may need to do to keep up. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Granke. Any Councillor Brennan, why don't you start us off?
Thanks, Carl. In your when we're talking about the planning fees, and it's I understand the rationale about cutting red tape, getting things done, that sort of thing. In your experience, and given this table that you have here, what are our timelines in terms of approvals? I suspect we're within the no refund zone most of the time.
Mr. Granke.
So I haven't tracked that in a comprehensive basis, Mr. Chair. Certainly with respect to site plan applications, they often do end up taking longer, especially for more complex ones where there are normally a few drafts. So once we receive a site plan application, receive all of the supporting studies that are required to deem it complete, then that gets submitted to other departments and agencies for technical review and comment, and then those get turned around. So larger site plan applications can take a number of months, and that's not unusual. So looking based on our expectation, it appears highly likely that we will be looking to probably have to refund certain fees. So smaller scale zoning or zoning and OPAs, I think we will likely, the 90 days and 120 days is typically achievable in a very, very best case scenario. So if we get the public meeting right away, and work through the reporting timelines and calendars. So again, I haven't done a detailed assessment for what this means, but it's certainly not based on what we've seen in the last number of years. Chances are there would be some refunds offered.
Okay, that's good to know. Through the chair, I guess maybe this is coming in effect in January of 23. I would be interested to know how our municipal colleagues in AMO are commenting on this, and maybe that's if there is something to be done through that association. If we need to lobby, I think would be interested to hear what other municipalities think of it.
Thank you. I've got Mayor Panko and then Councillor Dwyer.
Thanks, Carl. A great summary report on a very long, deep, and detailed provincial policy. So I think we appreciate the Coles notes. But having gone through before, I would say it probably didn't hit what I was hoping for when it came to deepest concerns we have in our community. And while I appreciate the intent here is to streamline processes and lower barriers, with respect to your comments earlier, Carl, I don't think that's an issue in our municipality. And if anything, it's being able to handle the workload that's coming. And to our previous report tonight, we also have to understand our staff have a life as well and can't be working 60 hours a week. With the volume of construction that's happened here tells me that even though there may be some delays, as you've mentioned, it's not an issue. And if Ontario needs to build 1.5 million homes in the next decade on the top of the 5.2 million we have now, then we need to build about 1,300 to 1,400 on top of the roughly 4,400 that we have now. And if you take what's happened last year, what's happening now, what's in the pipe coming down, what's coming down the pipe, we're probably halfway there in a matter of a few years when some of these homes all get built. So I don't think this is necessarily an issue that directly affects us, other than we have to fall in line. And to your discussion with Councillor Brannan, the potential risk of having to pay back some fees, which may be modest anyway, if we can't meet timelines. But where it misses, of course, is the affordability factor. And while supply may have a modest positive effect on affordability, with the cost of home construction, with all these other factors, we know that affordability is beyond the reach of probably the majority of our population in our community now. So some disappointment there, but I hope overall that perhaps the streamlined process will help a little bit. But again, I think this is a policy designed primarily for places other than Smiths Falls.
Thank you. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, it's my understanding that there is a further amendment coming down the pipes in addition to this bill, the more home, whatever they're calling it now, more homes, more choices, not that one, it's the next revision. But within the next 6 months, there should be another amendment as well. But it's nice to see that Carl's got the policy in place. We're ready to be in place for the end of the year when the fee adjustments are supposed to come in. I know, speaking to colleagues, that it sounds like most municipalities are looking at inflating their rates on the off chance that a reduction is requested with opportunity for a rebate. So I think there's still ample time for the town to figure out a strategy for how to handle that. But I think, you know, at least we've got the steps underway to bring ourselves into consistency with the legislation as it exists today under version 2.0.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything to say around that, Mr. Grenke, or just you were listening? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any, we did delegate some of those minor to you and your department and to staff. If you, in your wisdom, think of other ways that council can help accelerate the planning process by doing more of those types of things, will you please let us know? Because we do not want to be giving refunds back to developers if we don't have to. And if it's simply, if it's something we can do on our end to help you, please bring it to our attention. Mr. Grenke?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that point, and to Councillor Dwyer's point as well, there have been recent amendments to previous amendments to the Planning Act that are looking to delegate certain approvals of certain applications to municipal officials. So some minor variances, some zoning amendments, provided that supportive official plan policy is in effect. So that's certainly something to that would be on our radar in the next little while, and potentially can be looked at in conjunction with the policies as they're currently outlined right now.
Okay, thank you. And that's, we appreciate receiving that information. It's very helpful, and I hope the other two councillors have an opportunity to read it as well. Excuse me, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councillor Brennan.
As we're moving on to the next item, and I'm really am looking forward to and discussing this report for the strategic plan, I'm going to ask my colleagues, and I hope CEO Morris is not offended, if we would be amenable to defer this one till we're all present.
Colleagues, any thoughts on that? Councillor Dwyer?
I'm fine with that. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, CA Morris, but I think this will be our last version of this report that we get before the election. Is that correct?
Through the chair, if we were to stick to the 6-month schedule for reporting, you're quite right. I had planned on doing one more in October, just as a final wrap up, but for what it's worth, I would not be offended if this were deferred.
Then I will second Jay's suggestion that we defer.
Councillor Alford?
There's just one thing I need to know, Malcolm, and I did think this was our second last one, because I'd like to hear the end of the story to our strategic plan in October before we leave office. But the only burning question I had out of the whole thing was, can we not find out who owns the basketball bridge? That's all, and I'm agreeable to defer.
Great question, and we know, we've established who does not own it.
Okay, well, we're making progress then.
Let's leave them hanging on that question. Mayor Penko, you don't have any objection to deferring this till Councillor McGuire and Councillor Allen is back? And then Mr. Morris certainly doesn't. Thank you. So a motion to adjourn, that the council adjourn its proceedings at 7:27 and stand solely adjourned. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Alford. All in favor? And to the people watching, there'll be a 5-minute brief intermission, and we'll have a council meeting to follow. Thank you.
Councillor Dwyer, would you do the playground equipment resolution 8.1? Councillor Dwyer? Oh, she doesn't have her invite.
Nikki, you hear me?
Okay. I'll tell her when she
I
goes
assume
back
she
on.
will.
I'm sure she will. So we'll put 8.1 will be with Councillor Dwyer. Adjournment will be with.
Sorry?
Adjournment's going to be with Peter.
Right.
On Peter's seconding the right to disconnect that I have.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, where's that?
So that's the bylaw I sent you by email. I'm not sure if you got it. So
Email?
that'll be
That's 7.2?
That'll be 7.2. Yeah, right. That'll be Wendy and Peter. And 7.1 we'll do with Jay.
You said you sent the email already, Nadine?
Yeah, I sent it earlier. What was that?
Yeah, you might send that again. I don't see it here.
Okay. Yeah, I sent it 22.
Oh, sorry, there it is. Initial bylaw for tonight. Okay, I got it. And Peter's seconding that. And just need. Peter, you got adjournment. Your seconder for adjournment is?
Councillor Dwyer.
Okay.
She's the only one on camera.
Okay, Jay, you have a sec. You got 7.1. Who's your seconder? Jay, Nikki, can you hear me?
I
Yeah.
can hear you. I can
Sorry.
second it.
Okay,
Thank you.
so
7.1.
Jay with Nikki, and then
Chris, my headphones died before. Did I miss anything?
So I give you 8.1. Did you get that?
Nope. Okay, 8.1.
Yeah.
8.1, that's the playground equipment, I thought.
Oh, thank you.
and your seconder, Nikki.
Oh, it's too bad Lorraine's not here. Jay,
Jay says okay.
Jay's hand went up.
Jay's the big kid anyway.
I think he
Yeah.
does spend more time in the parks than any of us.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
Not yet.
okay, we are, I think, ready to roll here.
Okay, so we will go live if everyone's ready.
Sure.
We'll go live in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, welcome back. This is our special meeting with Smiths Falls Town Council of Tuesday, May 24th. I will open the meeting with our regular land acknowledgement. On May 24th, we acknowledge that the sacred land in which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We're grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We're also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, and being mindful of generations to come. I'll call the meeting to order. I have one proclamation today. National Accessibility Week, May 29th to June 4th, 2022. Whereas throughout Canada each year, the week starting on the last Sunday in May is to be known as National Accessibility Week and is an opportunity to promote inclusion and accessibility in our communities and workplaces, to celebrate our progress and to be inspired to further break down accessibility barriers. Whereas many Ontarians live with some form of disability, and as a result, there is a need for greater awareness, enhanced service delivery, and opportunities for persons with disabilities. And whereas individuals with disabilities are impacted daily by barriers to information, facilities, employment, transportation, and communication supports, therefore negatively challenging an individual's ability to fully participate in community life. And whereas accessibility and inclusion are essential for ensuring that all community members have equity and opportunities and the ability to fully participate in community life. Whereas Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls is committed to accessibility and has appointed an active accessibility committee to play a pivotal role in helping the Town of Smiths Falls become a barrier-free community. Now therefore be resolved that I, Sean Pangle, Mayor of the Town of Smiths Falls, do hereby proclaim May 29th to June 4th, 2022 as National Accessibility Week and encourage everyone to support equality of access and opportunity for persons with disabilities in the Town of Smiths Falls. A few items of business to look after today. First bylaw is with Councillor Brennan, please.
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works respecting temporary traffic provisions be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Dwyer. The bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works respecting temporary traffic provisions be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Discussion, Councillor Brennan?
We just discussed this a little while ago at Committee of the Whole, and it's largely administrative. But this will give our director, McMunn in this case, the authority to direct traffic as per construction needs. So that's something that isn't on the books at this point, but it will be now.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works respecting temporary traffic provisions be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10350/2022.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Brennan, second by Councillor Dwyer, that a bylaw to delegate authority to the Director of Public Works respecting temporary traffic provisions be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10350/2022. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Second bylaw is with Councillor Alford, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to adopt a disconnecting from work policy for the town of Smiths Falls be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to adopt a disconnecting from work policy for the town of Smiths Falls be received and read a first time and taken as read a second time. All in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Discussion, Councillor?
Yes, Your Worship, with more employees now after the pandemic working from home, the province is requiring municipalities or employers of more than 25 employees to implement a disconnecting from work policy. This council is wholly supportive of such a move to allow our employees to have the work-life balance and not be interfered with by having to answer things after hours or on weekends. I wish I had the report in front of me, but as I'm working on 3 different screens, I've lost it on all 3. So I can't go more detailed than that, but certainly we all understand that in this new way of doing business, we have to make it acceptable to staff to make sure that they are taking care of themselves and their own families rather than just work 24/7.
Thank you. Any further discussion? May I have a third reading, please?
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to adopt a disconnecting from work policy for the town of Smiths Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10351/2022.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Alford, second by Councillor McKenna, that a bylaw to adopt a disconnecting from work policy for the town of Smiths Falls be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 10351/2022. All in favor? That's carried. And Councillor Dwyer, I'm sure you're excited to move the next motion.
I am so excited. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Brennan, that Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls award RFP 22-CS-002 for Victoria Park and Highland and Corbett Park to playground planners in the amount of $243,779.10, including non-refundable HST.
Thank you. And further discussion?
Thank you. So this is a major component of the town strategic plan. When we set out as a council, we made it very clear that we wanted to see significant upgrades to our parks. And so the culmination of that has been an RFP process to see the park structure's replacement at Victoria Park and the install of a new structure at Highland and Corbett Park. And we are so excited and proud to see this taking place this summer.
Thank you. Any further discussion? It's moved by Councillor Dwyer, seconded by Councillor Brennan. The Council of the Corporation of the Town of Smiths Falls award RFP 22-CS-002 for Victoria Park and Highland and Corbett Park to playground planners in the amount of $243,779.10, including non-refundable HST. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any inquiries or announcements? And sorry, I missed reports earlier. I assume there was none, but nothing further tonight. So Councillor McKenna, it's your opportunity to adjourn us.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dwyer that this council adjourn its proceedings at 7:40 and stand so adjourned until the next duly called meeting of council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor McKenna, second by Councillor Dwyer. This council adjourns proceedings at 7:40 p.m. and stands so adjourned to the next duly called meeting of council. All in favor?